Hello, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bryn and I'm so glad you're here. In today's video, we're starting off 2024 so strong by talking about all the books I read in 2023. Now, I'm not gonna lie, 2023 was the year I got back into reading. I used to read a lot in like middle school and then I stopped, and then in high school I read a bit and then I stopped, went to college, and then of course this past year I found my love for reading again and it like went full swing. So I read a lot of like Colleen Hoover books because that's just like what got me back into reading. So I feel like I have so many books that I've wanted to read that I like feel like I read but I didn't actually read. So 2024 I'm gonna have so much book content on my YouTube channel. I plan on posting 2 times a week, so if you're excited about that, you should definitely subscribe down below. And we just recently hit 3,000 subscribers, so yay! Thank you guys so much. I would not be here without you, and I'm so beyond grateful for all the opportunities that this has led me to, and I'm just feeling very reflective and grateful this upcoming new year. I think I read around 20 books this year, so let's get into it. Let's talk about the books I read, what I rated it, if I would change my rating, how I feel about it looking back. Without further ado, let's get started. So I actually didn't start reading books again until about May of this year, and the first book that I read was actually a Colleen Hoover book, and it was Reminders of Him. Now I have read It Ends With Us, I think last year in 2022, or I guess now 2 years ago. So weird to think about. I did read that book and I liked it. Looking back, not my favorite book in the entire world. However, this book, I love this book so much, and I know not everybody is like a big Colleen Hoover fan, but I'll always be, because I feel like she just got me back into reading and I have to thank her for that. So I actually really love this book. I remember sobbing at the end of it, and I read this book so fast. I remember absolutely loving it, and honestly this might be one of my favorite Colleen Hoover books, if not my favorite Colleen Hoover book. So I rated this 5 stars, and I don't think I would change my rating. Honestly, maybe if I read it again I would change it. I loved this book, honestly. It left me sobbing at the end, and I feel like anybody who asks me what Colleen Hoover book to recommend, I always say this one first. I actually highly recommend this book. So the next 4 books I read, because this is a series, I actually read all 4 of the Heartstopper books, and I read these all within like 3 days or something, and I absolutely love this series. If you guys know me at any capacity, or if you guys have asked me what my favorite book series is, I've always said this book series. I'm obsessed with it. It's like cute little, it's like a graphic book. There's a bunch of like comics in it. It's just so different and I love it so much. The TV show, I love it so much. Alice Osman, I'm literally your biggest fan ever. 5 stars for all of these, and 5th book just recently came out and I did read that, so we'll get to that a little bit later in the video. But everyone always asks me what series I recommend, and I always say this one. It's a super quick read, super cute, and I love it so much, and there's a TV show to go with it, so I feel like that just adds bonus points. After the Heartstopper books, I did read another Colleen Hoover book. I actually was on a Colleen Hoover binge at this point in the year. So the next book I read was the sequel, or the second book to It Ends With Us. I read It Starts With Us. Looking back, I actually think I like this book more than It Ends With Us, and everyone like hates on me for that, but I just was such a big fan of Lily and Atlas, and I rated this book like a 3 stars. It like wasn't my favorite book, but I loved reading the story of those two. This one, I did like it. I did. It wasn't bad, it wasn't good, but I liked it. Like, I loved reading Atlas and Lily's story, and everyone hates on me on that, but maybe that's an unpopular opinion. I know this book didn't need to exist, but I'm glad it does. I said what I said, okay? Continuing on the Colleen Hoover train, I read Ugly Love, and I had really high hopes for this book because everybody was talking about how they love this book and how it's their favorite Colleen Hoover book. Actually, I rated it like 3 stars, I think. Yeah, I rated this book 3 stars. It was not my favorite book. I actually didn't even like the book until about like halfway through, and then towards the end, like, I couldn't put the book down. All in all, it just wasn't my favorite book, but I kind of don't even remember like really what it's about. But I do remember like the plot twist. The plot twist is something I think about actually a lot. When I hear this book, I immediately think of that plot twist. And yeah, it wasn't bad, it wasn't good, it was alright. I rated it 3 stars. Took a little break from Colleen Hoover, and the next book I read was All the Bright Places. I heard a lot of really good things about this book. It's a really sad book. Definitely check the trigger warnings before you read this book. I know a lot of you have probably seen the movie. I think there's a movie to go along with it. But it wasn't my favorite book. It was really sad. I had a hard time reading it. Rated it 3 stars. I kind of was in a reading slump when I picked this book up, so that could have affected the way I viewed the book. So maybe if I reread it, I'd have a different point of view. Yeah, it wasn't my favorite book of all time, but I did like it, and it was kind of tough for me to read, but I did rate it 3 stars. Okay, we're back on the Colleen Hoover trend again, but I read All Your Perfects, and I actually read this in like a single day. I don't understand why people don't like this book. Actually, I can understand why people don't like this book. But personally, I binged this book. I thought it was good. When I read it, I was like, why aren't people talking about this book more? I personally really liked it. I rated it 5 stars. I think if I went back and read it, I don't think I would have rated it 5 stars. I think I just was like getting into my books, and I was like, wow, this is really good, but I've definitely read better books since then. I think if I were to go back, I would probably rate it 4 stars, but I don't know why people don't talk about this book. I really enjoyed this book. I read it literally within the same day. I really liked it. I did. I'm gonna be the one to say it. I rated it 5 stars. I believe this was my last Colleen Hoover book of the year, and then we'll move on to some other things. But the next book I read was November 9 by Colleen Hoover, and I actually also enjoyed this book. I know a lot of people don't like this book, and I can see why, but when I read it, I was like, wow, I actually genuinely really enjoyed this book. I liked the plot of the story. I liked like what was going on. Basically, it's about this girl who is an actress, and then there was a house fire, and then this boy like pretends to be her boyfriend, and then they meet up every year on November 9th for like 6 or 7 years or something. And I actually thought that was a really interesting plot line. I really liked it, to be honest. When I read it, I rated it 5 stars. Again, if I would go back, it probably wouldn't be 5 stars. I enjoyed it, and I like get scared to say that because a lot of you guys are like big Colleen Hoover haters, but I just have to thank her for getting me back into reading. So I enjoyed this book, rated it 5 stars. Alright, now we're getting into some of the really good books that I read this year. Not including this one though. This one I read Twisted Love by Anna Huang, and I did not read the rest of the series this year, but it's definitely something I want to do in this year in 2024. Yeah, I read this book of 3.75 stars. It wasn't my favorite book. I can see why people hate it. I enjoyed it enough to hopefully continue with the rest of the series. I do have all the books, so I don't know what's stopping me from reading the rest of it. I didn't like this book until about halfway through, but then after that I like couldn't put the book down, so that's why I rated it 3.75. Can't wait to read the rest of the series though. I heard it just gets better, so I'm excited to continue that. But yeah, this may or may not be my favorite book of the entire year, and it is The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. Easily 5 stars. I binged this book. I read it probably within 2 days. I loved it. I went right into the second book. This book just left my jaw on the floor all the time. I thought I figured it out, and then I didn't, and then it just kept going like this. Journey to the end was crazy. Always recommend this book. Someone says, what book should I read? The first thing I say is The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. Really easy to read. It's fast paced. You have so many like unanswered questions, and it's really fun to try and figure out what the ending's gonna be, and then you're just like always wrong. It's just so much fun to read. Really fast paced, easy to binge. I love it so much. Freida McFadden is definitely one of my favorite authors, and I think this may be my top book of the entire year. Like I said, I went right into The Housemaid's Secret. This one I didn't love as much, but I did still really like it. I rated this book a 4 stars out of 5. And I think that's just because I didn't really like this one as much as the first one. But the series as a whole, I'm obsessed with it. I highly recommend it to anybody. If you haven't read this, please go get your hands on this. I love this series so much. And there's a 3rd one coming out, I believe in June. I'm really excited about that. And I will be purchasing that as soon as it comes out. I was obsessed with this duology, and now I can't wait for it to become a trilogy. The next book I read was This Winter by Alice Oseman, and it was like a really short read. It was like maybe less than 100 pages or something. I thought this was a really cute and super quick read. I think I rated it 3 stars. I think I just rated it 3 stars because it like wasn't like the greatest, but it like wasn't the worst thing. I just feel like I didn't have enough time with the characters, but same characters as Heartstopper, so I always feel like I'm wanting more of them. We got a little bit more in this book, and yeah, 3 stars. I liked it. I just wish it was a little bit longer. This book I loved love seeing like Tori's perspective and Oliver's perspective. 3 stars. A pretty solid book. I liked it. The next book I read was called Volatile, if I'm pronouncing that right. Miss Caroline Nichols sent this to me. Even though this book was sent to me to review, I genuinely really enjoyed this book. It was a little hard for me to get into. Once I was like in it, I was like, wow, I'm eating this up. I really enjoyed this book a lot. I rated this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. I hope this author writes more books. I believe as a debut novel, this was absolutely amazing, and I'm very glad that she sent this to me. So if you're watching this, thank you so much. If you write any more books, I'll literally read and purchase every single one of them because I believe you're so talented. Literally, genuinely, 100% honest review. I really enjoyed this book. There was a lot of like things going on that I wouldn't have guessed. Pretty solid book. Very, very well done as a debut novel. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest you give it a shot. The next book I read was Back to Frida McFadden. I read The Coworker. This is her newest release, I believe. Until next month, I believe in February, she's coming out with The Teacher, which I'm really excited about. But back to The Coworker. I actually really enjoyed this book. I read a lot of it like on a plane ride. And the only thing I didn't like about this book was just how many turtle references there were. I believe it was a very like unique concept for the book. Personally, I think there were way too many turtle references. I rated this a 4.5 out of 5. I genuinely enjoyed reading about the journey, and the plot twist got me so good. I literally have no words for it. I really, really loved it. This is just again, a really fast-paced, easy to binge book. So many unanswered questions, and that's what I really like about a thriller. I just love trying to answer the questions along the way. Highly recommend this one. The next book, and I think it's the second to last book that I read this year, was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. And I don't really feel comfortable giving this book a rating because this is literally what she went through, and who am I to rate that? Like, that's just feels so wrong to me. Obviously, this was one of the best books I read this year. I just look up to her so much. Her relationship with food and with her mother, it was just so insane to read about. As somebody who also is like recovering with the relationship with food, I really appreciated how vulnerable she was in this book. Like, we're both out here like doing the thing, girl. Like, I just wish I could give her like the biggest hug ever. I just want to thank her for writing this book and for sharing her story, everything that she went through with her family, with relationships, with the TV show. It was just really amazing to read, and if you haven't read it, please go read it. I was sobbing literally like the entire time. It was probably like one of my favorite books that I read this year, and I just wish I could give Jeanette McCurdy the biggest hug and just thank her for writing this book. And then the last book I read this year was Heartstopper Volume 5. This literally just came out last month or something. I literally picked this up as soon as it came out. I posted it on my TikTok and everyone was like, how did you get your hands on that? Where it didn't come out yet. And I was like, I thought it came out, but I guess I got it early. Somehow my Barnes & Noble must have had it early. Literally obsessed with this book. I read it on my flight. So easy to read. It took me like an hour. I love this book. I love Nick and Charlie so much. I can't wait to see season 3 of Heartstopper. I can't believe volume 6 is gonna be the last book. Are you kidding me? I need Nick and Charlie forever. I absolutely love this book. I believe I rated it 5 stars. I'm obsessed with Alice Osment. I'm obsessed with Nick and Charlie. I'm obsessed with Kid Connor. I'm just obsessed with this. This is my favorite, like one of my favorite series of all time. So if you haven't read it, please go read it. It's so good. That was everything that I read in 2023, and I believe I hit my goal, which is really good. This year, I think I'm gonna set it for 35 books, maybe even 40 if we're feeling a little ambitious. If you're not following me on Goodreads, you can definitely follow me. The link's in the description box. On my Instagram story, every time I finish a book, I have it in my books highlight, so you guys can go check that out if you want. Here's my Instagram. I post a lot of videos on my book talk account, so that is right here. You guys can go follow that too if you'd like. Everything will be in the description box. Thanks for joining me. Happy 2024, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!